Cast your mind back to the World Cups you remember most clearly. France 1998, Germany 2006, South Africa 2010, Brazil 2014. What you remember is the flow of those tournaments, the momentum of a match building across 90 minutes, the sense that anything could happen at any point, that football exists in continuous time, that the game you are watching is breathing and living without interruption. You remember goals scored in the 78th minute that changed everything. You remember passages of play that developed across 20 minutes of sustained pressure, building and building until something gave. You remember football as a sport defined by its continuity, two halves, each a complete story with only a break in between. Now, at the 2026 World Cup, something different is happening. Midway through each half, the referee blows his whistle, play stops, players gather by the touchline, coaches emerge from technical areas and gather their squads for 3 minutes of tactical conversation. Advertising screens inside the stadiums light up. Television broadcasters in several countries cut to full commercial breaks. Fans inside packed stadiums in Toronto, in Boston, in Foxborough, and Arlington begin to boo. Not the players, not the referee, the break itself. The sound of a crowd booing a water bottle has become one of the defining sounds of the World Cup's opening 2 weeks. And now, UEFA has delivered its verdict on the whole arrangement. The governing body of European football announced it will not adopt FIFA's mandatory hydration break model for Euro 2028 or the Champions League. It will continue using its existing approach where cooling breaks are only introduced when specific heat thresholds are reached, 32 degrees Celsius on the wet bulb globe temperature scale, not as a fixed universal requirement across every match regardless of conditions. That decision is not a minor procedural footnote. It is the clearest possible institutional statement from the second most powerful football body on earth that FIFA got this one wrong. So what's really happening here? Let's go through it properly, because the hydration break controversy, when you examine the full picture, is not simply about water. It is about trust, about what FIFA says and what FIFA does, and about who football's decisions are actually made for. Begin with the basic facts. FIFA announced in December that all 104 matches would feature mandatory 3-minute hydration breaks midway through each half. The breaks are compulsory across every match, in every venue, regardless of temperature, regardless of whether the stadium has air conditioning or a retractable roof, regardless of whether the conditions justify any interruption at all. A match played indoors in an air-conditioned stadium in Arlington, Texas at 9 o'clock in the evening features the same mandatory break as a match played in open-air Houston at midday in 38-degree heat. No distinction, no context, no flexibility. FIFA's justification was presented through the language of player welfare. The governing body pointed to the Club World Cup last summer, where heat conditions in several American venues created genuine concerns. It cited the expanded 48-team format and the potential for players to compete in 8 matches over 39 days. It argued that applying identical rules across every fixture ensures fairness and competitive integrity, that introducing breaks only in selected matches could create inconsistency between teams playing under different conditions. And FIFA President Gianni Infantino stated plainly that this was not a financial issue. He said it was purely a sporting matter. The main reason, he said, is the heat. Here's the interesting part, because within 2 weeks of the tournament opening, the gap between that stated justification and the visible reality had become impossible to ignore. Weather expert Everton Fox, tracking conditions across the tournament's venues, found that very few of the games played so far had actually met the level of heat that would require a break under any established scientific protocol. Matches in Toronto, where temperatures were in the low 70s Fahrenheit, and conditions were described as cool and wet. Matches at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, played under a roof with air conditioning, where Van Dijk's Netherlands drew with Japan in conditions that were, by the defender's own description, not hot enough to need mandatory water stops. Van Dijk laughed when asked about it. And then he said something that a captain of his stature chooses carefully. He said hydration breaks are a bit interesting. He said every time they go to commercial is a bit... And then he paused, and he said he doesn't really like it. He said for neutral viewers on television, it's also not great. And he said that if it's really hot, obviously it would be good to put them in, but you have to look at it in every game, separately in his opinion. That is not the statement of a complaining player. That is the captain of the Netherlands national team, one of the most experienced footballers in the world, saying clearly that the system as designed doesn't match the reality of the conditions in which it's being applied. Didier Deschamps, France's manager, said the break was splitting the halves in a way that disrupts momentum. He said it was almost 4 quarters now, and before there were 2 halves. Marcelo Bielsa, whose philosophical engagement with the game is deeper than almost any manager alive, went further than anyone. He said that according to general consensus, playing 4 periods instead of 2 alters the culturally constructed conception of how to interpret football. He said it adds nothing and takes away a lot. He added that these aren't just his opinions, but a general view, that the break has consequences that are not positive. And then he delivered the sentence that lands hardest in the context of everything surrounding this tournament. He said there are great successes, like the influence of VAR, which has improved the game. But this other attempt, he said, has consequences that are not positive. Bielsa, of all people, the most intensely football-minded manager at this World Cup, was drawing a distinction between a technological intervention that he believes has improved the game, VAR, and a procedural intervention he believes has damaged it. That distinction matters because it separates the question of whether FIFA is capable of good governance from the specific question of whether this particular decision was good governance. He answered both parts. VAR, yes; this, no. Now, this is where things change entirely, because the financial dimension of the hydration break has been estimated with a specificity that FIFA's own response cannot simply wave away. Broadcasters are permitted to insert advertising during the 3-minute breaks, creating scheduled commercial inventory within live match coverage that had never previously existed at a World Cup. The advertising slots created in the American market alone, Fox Sports, which carries the primary English-language broadcast, are estimated to generate around $250 million in additional revenue across the tournament. Worldwide, across all broadcast markets, the figure is estimated to extend well beyond $1 billion, $1 billion, in commercial revenue from 3-minute breaks in a football match, distributed to broadcast partners as part of their rights agreements. FIFA said it makes no additional revenue during the hydration breaks. The president said it clearly, not a financial issue, purely sporting. And this is the specific claim that Canadian right-back Alistair Johnston addressed with the particular directness of someone who is at the tournament and watching it with his own eyes. He said it's probably making some more money for FIFA. He called it a hydration break turned into a commercial break. Johnston is not a journalist or an analyst. He is a World Cup player, playing in his home country, watching the tournament he's participating in, and reaching the same conclusion that hundreds of millions of television viewers reached when Fox cut to a full advertising break during the first World Cup match and missed live action. That happened. Fox Sports, the primary American broadcaster, cut away entirely during the Mexico versus South Africa opening match, and viewers missed footage from the pitch. The first match of the first World Cup to be opened in Mexico City in 40 years, and the primary American broadcaster took it to commercials. The crowds inside the stadiums haven't needed a television to reach their verdict. In Toronto, in Boston, in Foxborough, the booing of the hydration break has become a consistent, growing, unmistakable feature of the audience experience at this tournament. Fans who have paid hundreds or thousands of dollars to be inside a stadium to watch 90 minutes of continuous football are being given 4 quarters instead. They know exactly what they are watching and exactly why, and they are expressing their opinion about it in the only way immediately available to them. They are booing a water bottle. The VAR dimension of this nightmare deserves its own examination, because the two issues, hydration breaks and VAR, are being experienced by the football world simultaneously, and together they represent something significant about the quality of institutional decision-making at this tournament. VAR has now produced 3 major controversies in its first 2 weeks: Switzerland against Qatar, Argentina against Algeria, and England against Ghana. Algeria filed a formal complaint with FIFA in Zurich. Ghana's manager, Carlos Queiroz, said VAR went for a coffee and then said he was joking because otherwise they would fine him. The Messi challenge against Algeria remains the most debated single officiating moment of the tournament. the transparency standard for VAR decisions, showing the decisive visual evidence when a review is conducted, has been applied inconsistently, with the governing body sometimes displaying the key frame and sometimes simply announcing the outcome. What UEFA's decision to reject the mandatory hydration break model for Euro 2028 tells us is something beyond the specific controversy. It tells us that the institution most capable of influencing FIFA's behavior, the governing body of European football, whose clubs and national teams carry the most commercial weight in the global game, has looked at the system FIFA built for 2026, assessed it honestly, and decided not to replicate it. UEFA's existing protocol requires specific heat conditions before a break is mandated. Below those thresholds, any drinks break is at the referee's discretion. That is a flexible, context-sensitive, evidence-based approach. It is the approach that Virgil van Dijk was describing when he said you have to look at it in every game separately. UEFA agreed with Van Dijk, and they said so officially. Think about what it means for the players competing at this World Cup. Bosnia and Herzegovina, by multiple accounts, lost momentum during a hydration pause at a critical moment in one of their matches. Norway's manager Ståle Solbakken noted that the second-half break, mandated at the 67th minute, falls precisely in the window when most coaches make their most significant substitutions, between 60 and 70 minutes. It disrupts the tactical rhythm of the second half in a way that is not neutral. Teams that were building towards something find that something interrupted. Teams that were under pressure find an enforced pause that gives them breathing room they hadn't earned. The break is not tactically neutral. Belgium's coach Rudi Garcia acknowledged it was a coaching break as much as a cooling break. He understood its tactical value. That is not how a player welfare measure is supposed to work. The bigger issue sitting underneath both the hydration break controversy and the VAR disappointments is what they reveal together about the governing body's decision-making process when commercial and sporting interests conflict. FIFA mandated breaks that create advertising inventory, denied that the advertising revenue was a factor, and resisted calls for contextual application from coaches, captains, and scientists whose expertise in heat medicine they had cited as the justification for the policy in the first place. The scientists who co-wrote the letter to FIFA before the tournament, asking for 6-minute breaks, proper scientific oversight, independent temperature assessment, got 3 minutes and a commercial window. The football, through all of this, has continued to be extraordinary. The moments are real. The goals are real. The drama of a Qatar equalizer in the 94th minute, or Messi's hat trick, or Scotland's first World Cup win in 36 years, or Cape Verde drawing with Spain. These things have happened within the format FIFA built, interrupted by the breaks FIFA mandated, reviewed by the VAR system FIFA manages, and they are still beautiful. Football at this level is remarkable even when the framework surrounding it is imperfect. But the booing inside those stadiums is telling you something real, and UEFA's decision to look at what FIFA built for 2026 and say, we won't do that, is telling you something even more real. What do you think? Has the hydration break changed your experience of watching this World Cup? And when UEFA says it won't follow FIFA's model for Euro 2028, is that a warning FIFA is capable of hearing? If you found this worth your time, a like helps more than you'd think. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of football conversation. And tell me what you think below. I read everything. Football at this scale is never just a tournament. It's a moment in time, and 2026 will be remembered not only for what happened on the pitch, but for everything that interrupted it.